We have people today here from all over the country, some people from Canada, and we're just so excited to hear from these brilliant Muslims at Google, ranging from all forms of roles at Google, and we're just so excited. So yeah, let's get into it. So before we get into the actual event, I'm just going to go over the agenda real quick. So first, just a little bit of an intro by me. My name is Sarah Uthar. I am the co-founder of Muslim Women in Technology. Then we'll have a panelist introduction, followed by the panel, what you guys all came here for, moderated by my co-founder, Safa Shamim. And then we will have a Q&A, and our board member, Javeria, will be helping with that. And then we will have closing remarks and we'll call it a day. Who is Muslim Women in Technology? I know we have many new faces today. So I just wanted to share a little bit about our mission and who we are and what we do. So at the core, Muslim Women in Technology, we're here to empower Muslim women and underrepresented groups through a few different ways. One, we provide networking opportunities. We have a community, I think it's more now than 550, especially after this event. We have members on our website. You can join, and it's really simple. You just put in your email and you have access to tons of things consisting of our events that are always free. And just this network of people where you can post on a job board. We have our Slack, we have our website. So that is one of the big things we do. We have networking, and that is in the form of just our website, our Slack, and then also our events. We then have a lot of recruitment efforts where we are actually currently trying to connect pipelines through companies and hiring through our organization, and we've actually done it. Last month, in October, we had a cybersecurity at CNA panel, and CNA is the company I work at. So what we did was, it was like a tech talk, but the point of that event was for CNA to come and hire people from our community. So we do tons of recruitment events like that. And then mentorship. So we're actually in the works of creating our mentorship program. We have a lot of unofficial mentor-mentee relationships, but we're in the process of having a more formal program, and that is to be piloted early next year. And lastly, access to educational and career development workshops. So if you've looked through our Instagram or attended our past events, you guys know we do all sorts of events ranging from, we've had talks on data science, we've had talks on UI, UX, product management, and tons of other things. So we have a lot of those types of events. And then we have our big tech series, and we've had it with Microsoft, we've had it with Twitter, and today we're having it with Google. So that's a little bit about who we are and what we do. And lastly, if you want to stay connected and if you want to hear more about our events and be part of this amazing network of over 550 people, you can go to this solo link right here and you can follow us there. We have we post our events tons of places. And one thing that's not on here actually is our YouTube. Aslam, who is our intern, actually posts our YouTube videos and edits them and ensures that every time we have an event that it's recorded and it's up on our YouTube channel for you guys to check out in case you've missed it and hear from our amazing panelists that we have every time. Our amazing team. We recently expanded our team, and these lovely people are the ones that have helped brought this event to you guys today. So my name is Sarah. As I mentioned earlier, I am the co-founder of Muslim Women in Technology alongside Safa, who you'll be hearing from a little bit more today. And then we have Javeria in finance, Alia in outreach and partnerships, Khadija for UX and design, Misna for tech ops, Fatima will be leading that mentorship program I talked about earlier. Tabassum, sorry, that's a bit of a typo. Tabassum is our communications and Aslam is our tech ops. As you can see, we have people from all over the country, just like our amazing member base. So yeah, meet our wonderful team. And also, we're always looking for more people to join. So if you are interested in being part of our board or just helping out, feel free to reach out and join. And we would love for more people to join from around the country. So definitely hit us up and email us. And I'm going to turn it over to Safa now, who's going to be moderating our panel today.
Great. Thanks so much, Sarah, for that introduction. So, actually, I'm going to turn over to each of our speakers in the order that we have. I'd love for us to just talk through real quick at a high level and intro ourselves. So, Aisha Hassan, do you mind just doing a quick intro and then we can follow by Aisha Ansari, Kareem, Mahe, Manib, and Bisma?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Aisha. I'm based out of Austin, Texas. I've been at Google for the past 3 years, so straight out of college, and I joined originally into the cloud org. I joined as a cloud technical resident, so I rotated through their what was then a 16-month program, and I landed in a really cool like hybrid cloud specialist role. And earlier this year in August, I switched to YouTube as a program manager. So my team focuses on the mobile front end of the whole homepage. So all the tech that goes on behind the entire like homepage on the mobile app.
Hey everyone, this is Aisha as well, Aisha Ansari. I've been at Google for 10 years now in different functions and roles. Started off in the payments organization where I was the data analyst analyzing payment fraud. Then I went to sales operation for Google Maps APIs, which is our B2B product, and was helping the sales team with setting targets and setting up their compensation plans. Most recently, I'm in Google Search, and what I do here is product strategy and operations. So my role involves doing market research, bringing it to the product team, helping them develop a country or product strategy, and then also doing some analysis of our current users to help inform what our strategy should be in the future.
Hi, everybody. Kareem Muhammad Ali. I'm based in New York. 5 years into my career, I spent 2.5 as a consultant doing mergers and acquisitions. That was in Chicago. I moved over to Google in early 2019, doing a strategy and ops role in our sales organization. And then just this year, I started a new gig with the public policy team, which I'm very excited about. So I support our hardware business as it comes to public policy issues like supply chain, right to repair, and others.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mahe. I'm also based out of the Austin office. I am a program manager on the Google Cloud side. Been at Google for a little over 4 years, but I started out in inside sales covering Toronto, which was fun at Google because it meant we got to go up there all the time. And then for the last 2 years, I have been the go-to-market lead for a Google Cloud support product. So work on bringing that offer to market and making sure that our sales teams are properly enabled to sell that to our customers.
At Google for a total of 4 months. Previously, I was at Cisco Systems and Red Hat, but at my current role, I'm a senior financial analyst supporting cloud. And basically, what I do is I work on business cases for from the public sector standpoint when countries want to kind of move all their offerings to the cloud and kind of support them in making sure it's financially feasible and stuff. And then also supporting them from an OpEx standpoint and sales standpoint.
Hey, salam everyone. My name is Bisma, and I was at Google in the past for 2 years. I took a break for 3 years, and now I've been back for 1 month. I am a data scientist, and I worked in the HR department, helping forecast headcount, so how many people we're going to hire over the next few years. And now I work in workplace design, so helping figure out how to design workplaces for Googlers.
Awesome. Thank you all for the really great introductions. Just to start us off here, I'm personally very curious. What motivated you all to join Google? Obviously, there's other big tech companies, and you all have very different backgrounds prior to Google. So, Aisha, I'm sorry, maybe we can start with you on what really led and sparked your interest to join Google.
I really love Google products and was really excited about the opportunity to work on them. So I was keen to apply to Google. Even in undergrad, I applied, didn't get it right off the bat, but actually something that I wanted to touch on later too is that I made it known to everybody that I knew or close friends or close circles where I wanted to work and what I wanted to do. So as advocates came, I was able to, they knew what I wanted to do, and somebody actually referred me from my circle. So I think it's super important to let people know what you want to do.
Yeah, that's super important. I know a lot of people who first apply to Google don't actually get it. So the important of finding those connections is really important. And it comes down to really who you know at the end of the day. Actually, I want to ask you, Kareem, too, because I know you worked at PwC before, consulting space, very different than big tech. What catalyzed you to make that career and industry switch?
Yeah, well, the first one was burnout. Being a consultant for 2 years, traveling every week wasn't so friendly on me. But I think really having been in Chicago, grown up around there, seeing kind of the digital divide between the north and south sides was really, it's extremely stark. And so as I started thinking about what I really wanted to be when I grew up, uh, tech and specifically Google came to mind. Google's mission is to make the world's information universally accessible and useful. As we know, information is a means to economic opportunity, to health outcomes, and much more. And so, I was fortunate enough to apply and get a role here a few years ago.
Very cool. Yeah, it's so interesting you mentioned how kind of your passion for understanding like the city of Chicago led you to really reassess, hey, what do I actually want to do in using tech for good? And I think the public policy aspect is super important on that because you're working with stuff like that. So that's very cool. Great. And then Aisha Hassan, do you want to talk a little bit too about that? I know you originally majored in chemistry, finance background. Seems like you have a lot of different experiences. What led you into the cloud services at Google?
Yeah, so I actually knew how to code since high school. And originally, like every immigrant parent wants their daughter to be a doctor. That was the original plan. I quickly decided to drop that because I realized that wasn't for me. But I was in too deep into the chem degree, so I had to go through with it. But I continued to do like a computer science minor and continued to code. So I was lucky enough to land a software engineering internship before my junior year. And I think having that on my resume really like piqued Google's interest because they found me. And for this program, a lot of my peers were also they had different forms of degrees. So people had math majors, people had philosophy majors, and I think that was really cool because they really wanted people that had a different understanding to tech and like a really like a broad understanding, but as well as like understanding that brings them into the intersection of business and tech. And so I think joining a company that appreciates different mindsets was really what piqued it for me. But yeah, happy to land here and be in that spot.
Yeah, that's so interesting you mentioned that Google attracts so many different types of people. I think the stereotype is you have to be like a tech bro working at Google. There's that whole like Silicon Valley mindset, but you're right. They're actually changing that mindset, and that if you have a unique value add, they'd love to have you there. And going off on going off on that topic, Mahe, I just want to ask you because I know you're a program manager and you don't necessarily have technical expertise, but you're in the big tech space. So can you talk a little bit about what made you do that specific transition into big tech? Was there any concerns you had originally going into it? Because I think a lot of people have this fear that I need to be super technical or I don't know how my expertise can apply to Google.
Yeah, I have no technical background whatsoever. I was a government major in college and was in sales for 2 years prior to joining Google. But one of the things that I really loved about my first role while I was here was how supported I felt. Despite the fact that I had no technical background, I was working with really incredibly intelligent people who did, and no one ever made me feel stupid about it. Everyone was very willing to stay with me when I was confused about a cloud concept or whatever it might be and kind of help talk you through that. And part of being in sales is also being able to explain a really technical concept to someone who isn't technical. So that came in handy in some ways. I'm sure other folks have heard of this phrase and we'll surely talk about it otherwise, but it did kind of contribute to a little bit of imposter syndrome when I started out, just genuinely feeling like I did not know what the conversation was, but I feel very lucky that I've gotten to work with people who made that a non-issue and have helped me kind of build that skill to the level that I need to be successful in my current role.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love how you mentioned that you were able to ask people within your cohort or like just people at the company things you didn't know about. And through that experience, you might not be purely technical, but you were able to still gain those skills. And I think that's equally important too. I mean, I'm just turning it over to you because I think you have a really unique perspective of being in big tech and having that finance background. A lot of people in the financial spaces are looking at these banks, right? Consulting companies, but you've primarily been in the tech space with finance. So, what attracted you to that? Curious to hear your thoughts.
For me, it was probably when I had first started at Cisco. I had joined in their rotation program, so it kind of gave me uh, a different perspective of finance from maybe supporting business unit directly, working with sales directly, or even doing operational stuff. And so from that, I was able to kind of pick what aspect of finance for tech I enjoyed the most. And then for me, that was the more like the business development and kind of like the analysis standpoint of it. And so from there, I was kind of able to take my career in that trajectory to where, I could have build off of my sales ops experience. And I'm fortunate enough to be at Google and still learn every day something new. And the people that Google attracts, as you can see on this panel, everyone is like so bright and so wise. And then the fact that everyone, you take that and then you mix it with how kind and generous everyone is with their time and kind of explaining processes, it makes it a pretty good company and environment to be in.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love what you said about how everyone, and it goes back to what people are saying, how everyone has such a unique path to Google. And if you're interested in a certain area like finance or program management, there's people there you can connect with. And that actually
Mhm.
brings me to my next topic for Aisha and Sari, because I know you've been on the product team at Google for 10 years, but you've also had other roles within Google. Can you talk about a little bit internally making switches within the company and how do you go through that process?
Yeah. So when I was a data analyst, and I was in the payment side, I did know that I wanted to do something new next. And I think what I like to think about is what I want to learn next, and what I want to, or if there's something that's interesting, if I want to learn more about it. So like that's been my journey at Google, has been like, what do I want to learn next? What product area? What we have different ladders at Google, so we had to switch ladders to get to different roles because like there's people here on the panel that are on the program manager ladder, data science ladder. So to switch ladders is kind of like an internal interview process, but it's not as, I guess, drastic as applying externally. But I think just focusing on what I wanted to learn next, and how I could get those skills, and talking to people internally, whether it's through the Muslim network or other networks, trying to see what could be a good fit, and then applying and getting those roles.
Yeah, I love what you said about figuring out what is it that I want to learn next. I think a lot of times people get so comfortable in their role and just sitting in that comfort. And I think it's really important that you're so self-aware of knowing what's the next challenge I want to take on, what are my long-term interests. So that's super important. Bisma, I wanted to ask you a question. I know you're a data scientist, and I think a lot of people want to know what that's like at a big tech company. So what are the types of data sets that you deal with at Google? Are there really challenging and interesting problems you're solving on the HR side?
Yeah, for sure. So there's a big range of data sets. Some of them are very clean and it's very much in that big data format where you can do some really cool stuff with it. And then some of the teams are really early on, so you're just helping them get set up with their data, like helping them move away from spreadsheets into something that's a little bit more scalable. And the good thing about big tech is there's just so many different teams that there's a lot of interesting problems that you can solve. So right now, I'm on a project that's trying to help redesign our workspaces to be more COVID/hybrid work model friendly. So how do we move from a traditional, like everyone has a desk, to this new hybrid work model, which I think is a really cool application of data science. So there's definitely cool stuff to work on.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I love that you mentioned like the importance of like the data sets can come in so many different ways. It can be unclean. And I'm sure also there's so many different data sources too from Google. So I'm sure that's like a challenge too, just figuring out how to get that all consolidated. So that's super cool to hear. Great. And then Aisha Hassan, I did want to ask you too. I think there's a lot of questions about the actual interview process. And I know you've been at Google early on after college too. Is the actual interview process as difficult as working at Google? And I guess like what are some tips you have for people who are trying to apply?
Yeah, I think you can definitely psych yourself out when you're going through the whole interview process. And like, even for me, when I was interviewing, I remember I did a couple of my like technical interviews and I was like, I bombed it. Like it's done. Like I'm not gonna get the role. And even now, like switching into this role, like I didn't think I was gonna get it either, even though like we've discussed it's a bit easier. Um, it's still Google at the end of the day. Um, so I would say like pretty much just practice. It is like there's a lot of resources available online. If you do go for more of a technical role, there's obviously Crack the Coding interview, which everybody probably knows by now. But if it's one of the more like behavioral, googly interviews, I do a lot of interviews just because I prefer to do them. And I think what we look for is just making sure that you're actually answering the question and making sure that you're actually painting a story. I think as an interviewer, I like to make sure that they kind of like brought the whole answer full circle. And I think that that really just makes you stand out as a candidate.
Yeah, that's great advice. Does anyone else have anything else to add there from not from the non-technical standpoint? Maybe Kareem from like the public policy, government affairs side. Is their interview process different than maybe like a program management or product interview? I'm sure.
Yeah, it tends to focus around kind of functional knowledge as well as a couple other areas like your general cognitive ability and things like fit or what we call googliness. What I would recommend is one, have a referral. That's the quickest way for your resume to get seen. So if there's anybody you've worked with who works at Google and they can submit a referral for you, that's step number one. And then step number two would be just getting to know the company in more detail. Great way to do that would be reading the 10K, our annual filing, where we talk about things like risks to the business, our financials, and plenty more. For public policy specifically, it's going to depend on your your past experience. I actually didn't have really any policy experience before coming into this role, but I was also an internal transfer. So it all just kind of depends on the situation. The last thing I'll say is that if you should probably be a little bit nervous, maybe a little bit stressed, but you should also be enjoying the conversation. I think when I was interviewing with Google for the first time, coming from consulting, I was more at ease with the folks that I was talking to, and I found that a good sign. And I'm pretty comfortable here, so I think the fit thing is real.
Yeah, that's such a good point, and it actually leads me to my next question. How do you succeed once you're at Google? Obviously, there's a lot of really bright, talented people. Everyone has a voice in the room. I don't know, Bisma or Manib, do you have any thoughts on, for someone who's like a new hire coming in, what are ways you can prove yourself? Because I know that the evaluation process is pretty tough too at Google. So any advice on that?
Yeah, I actually think Google has one of the best evaluation processes I've seen. It's very fair. Like they judge you across these skills that are known to you much in advance. You can develop yourselves in those areas, and you can work with your manager to get a lot of feedback in those areas before you have those performance reviews. And my piece of advice if you're new is to just ask a lot of questions and really just be yourself. Like don't try to force yourself to be someone you're not. Just be yourself and try to develop the best that you can, and everything else will fall into place.
Yeah, I would say that asking a lot of questions, just be like a sponge wherever you go. No question is a dumb question, especially when it's early on. You don't want to, have that expectation that you know something, and then down the road you were like, oh, I actually never asked that question. And then another thing I would say is pretty helpful is get to know like the extended team and kind of like how those people kind of fit into your organization, because those people will be assets to you. If you're working with a data set that you're not really familiar with, that person can kind of guide you through and tell you all the nuances and stuff like that. So it's always good to have different friends that you can reach out to.
Yeah, the importance of networking too once you're internally at the company is very important. Thanks for sharing that. And Aisha, I'm sorry, question for you, just in terms of how you've succeeded at Google. I know you've been at the company for 10 years and you've been able to move yourself up vertically. How have you done that? Is it through, just having good relationship with your managers, having, certain benchmarks that you're hitting? Do you have like a structure or framework that you could share with people on just how they can move up in their careers at a big tech company?
Yeah, I mean, as Bisma mentioned, it's pretty clear what your expectations are to move, either get promoted at Google or to move to a different ladder. So trying to just sit down with your manager and see like, hey, how can I get to this next milestone? Because I see, and your manager gives you feedback on like, you're not hitting this, this, and that, and you are hitting here. So just having like open conversations with your manager. I'd say just like the people I've seen who succeeded at Google just like put the problem or the company first and kind of put their egos aside and try to solve a problem together. So just focusing on like the business outcome instead of who gets to do what or who gets to take credit for something. I've seen people who are just a lot more collaborative and put the team first just really succeed.
Yeah, that's super helpful to know. And then Mahi, question for you, just on the program management side, what does a typical day of yours look like? Is it really meeting heavy? Is there a lot of individual contribution work that you're doing it? Is it more, collaborative? Would love to know just a day in the life of program management. I know it's a really budding and popular field at the moment too.
So probably the most fun thing about my job is no 2 days really look the same at all. It's a ton of meetings. It's working with a lot of different people across a lot of different business groups. And it's also, when I get the time, like plenty of individual contributor work to the projects that I'm trying to push forward. I think the thing that I enjoy the most is getting to work with all of those people in all the different functions that we do. So I work with people in finance, I work with people on the engineering side, people who know so much more than I do. So every day becomes like a little mini business school opportunity to like pick up a new skill or learn something new, while also obviously driving forward my different programs. So as an example, this week, probably my priority is at the beginning of every year, we have a big sales conference. Usually it's in Vegas. This year it'll all be virtual. So this year I am managing my team's contribution to that session. I've gotten to get together all of our content, got to be in all of the producer sessions for it, engage a lot of execs, and then also a lot of sellers around the world to contribute to our content. So kind of organizing across all of those different people, and then also contributing on my own to some of the more creative aspects of what we're putting together. Next week, I will be working on something completely different. And that's just kind of the way it goes, which I really love.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's really interesting. I think as a big tech company, there's still a lot of autonomy for people working at Google, no matter what level you're at. So I love that they empower people working within the company to make those decisions, share whatever status report they need to with execs. So that's awesome that you have that type of power at the company. And then just talking a little bit about projects specifically, Aisha Hassan, I know you worked on the UI framework at YouTube. Are there any other projects that you're really particularly proud of that you could kind of showcase with our audience today?
Yeah, I have a project that was from my previous role back at Cloud. And I can talk about it because it's an open partnership. So Cloud had partnered with Sabre, and it was a really big, it was $1 billion commit, which like is crazy to me that $1 billion commits exist. And I joined the team as the app monetization lead, as somebody who's pretty junior, and I was pretty impressed that they were able to like trust me and like have me go forward as like the mainframe expert, like me knowing nothing as mainframes or about mainframes. And I think I was able to make a lot of impact and able to move a lot of their applications over their tenure. So that they had done a 10-year partnership with us. I was on the account for only a year, but in that time I was able to make a lot of impact on that project. I was actually able to get a promotion because of the work that I had done, and I think that that just kind of like speaks a lot to the company as a whole, that they don't really care about, you know, like whether you're super junior or super senior. They kind of treat everybody as equal, and I really felt that in that project. So I think that was a really memorable portion.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I'm hearing like a common trend between everyone saying that they're feeling empowered no matter how junior or how senior they are to carry out those tasks. That's really awesome. Kareem, I want to ask you a question. I think, obviously big tech has been in the news a lot. Like from a public policy standpoint, are you seeing challenges with kind of what the media is presenting and what you're working on, or is there a disconnect, you'd say? Love your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's a loaded question for sure. I think there are a lot of very fair criticisms leveled at Google and our subsidiary businesses in the media. And I also think that there are some takes that require a little bit more nuanced understanding. And so what I would recommend, I won't go into detail on those topics, but what I would recommend is, kind of consume a variety of sources. It doesn't always have to be from, your favorite news channel. And I'm not saying go watch like Fox News or something, but there are reputable journalists across the spectrum who write intelligently about Google and big tech in general. And so I would go ahead and do that, and then also just consider the overall ecosystem as well, not just for tech, but also on the international stage. And like things like geopolitics and how they affect our business and the decisions we make.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And then additionally too, Bisma, I wanted to just pivot into the idea of diversity and inclusion here. As a woman in tech, as a minority, and you're in the data space, how has that impacted your career? Have you found mentors or people who guided you along the way? And if you could just share any advice of just being a woman in that space, that would be great.
Yeah, I may be in a position where I am lucky and I haven't had to actively think about that. But I think, like what Aisha was saying first, if you put a problem in your team first, that will show in your work and that'll get you the respect of your coworkers and really make you eligible for promotions and open up opportunities for you. That being said, I do think female role models have helped me along the way. Just in previous roles, seeing female bosses and their strong work ethic has just inspired me to do that for myself as well.
Yeah, that's great. And then I wanted to just go off of that too. Aisha Ansari, how has being a woman in the product space shaped you, being a minority? Are you involved in ERGs? Is there a way you're spreading awareness about, just the different diversity and groups within Google?
Yeah, I mean, we have an ERG. I was involved for a lot of years in the ERG as well. And I think it's interesting in the product space, especially with Google search. We're building a product that's global, and we're trying to serve everybody's needs. There's like cool things that Google does for Ramadan, for example, for the doodle and other things. So it's kind of cool to be a part of that and see it come to fruition. And sometimes the product teams ask for opinions about related to what we should do. So I think it's really cool to have that kind of reach in a company. So I really appreciate that about Google and just the access that I have to make that impact. As it relates to being a minority, I don't know. I think I feel like everybody in Google is like really different and has their own quirks and differences, and I just feel like that's just, being a Muslim woman is just like one of my differences, and everybody else is different in their own way. So I think just thinking about it like that has helped me, and I haven't thought of it otherwise. So I guess I haven't like proactively thought of it as like being a minority woman, just think of it as like there's diverse coworkers and I'm just one of them. And that has really helped me.
Yeah, that's huge. And the fact that you're not even thinking about that means the place is very inclusive and you already see the diversity firsthand. So that's incredible. I think that speaks volumes. I did just want to ask a bit of an open-ended question. It's no secret that people who work at Google tend to be more happy. It's not just the branding, it's truly the feel of the company too. But what are you guys most excited about working at Google? Is it the people? Is it the projects you're working on? A little bit of everything. I'd love to hear from anyone on just what they're most excited about in the next few years.
I think for me, it's the people. I'm sure it's like this at any job, but the people really make the job. And my experience at Google has always been working with great people. And then I also think, like I said before, because it's such a big company, kind of any field that you're interested in, you could probably find it there. So there's a lot of opportunity.
That's great. Yeah, people are big, and I'm sure there's no shortage of, finding people to connect with at the company too. And that kind of leads me to my next question. Maybe Manib, you can help answer this. Because there's so many incredible people at the company, I think as someone joining Google, it can feel overwhelming, right? Who should I connect with? Who should I learn from? How do you strategically figure out, like, okay, these are the three people I'm going to stay in close contact with for my professional development? Do you have any insight on what that framework kind of looks like?
Yeah, so when I had onboarded, they had told me about the Google mentorship program, so immediately took that up. And so my mentor has been pretty helpful in getting me onboarded and kind of overcoming the imposter syndrome that was mentioned earlier. As for my team, it's for me, the thing I've always done is just, if I have recurring meetings with people, just kind of picking some of the names out of the meeting list and just kind of setting up a 15-minute coffee with them and just kind of picking their brain to see, how they like working on the team and what are some challenges that they've faced and how they overcame them. So again, it goes back to the networking aspect. If you, have the right people in your network, it's going to make your life a lot easier.
Yeah, that's a great point. And then just a few more questions before we go into Q&A here. I want to talk about the idea of challenges. I think a lot of people think, like, great, once I'm in a big tech company, smooth sailing, I got my foot in the door. How have you guys dealt with overcoming challenges, whether it's with a project or maybe you're getting pushback from a team or stakeholders at the top and you're not able to push through what you're trying to work on? Could you guys explain a little bit about just the idea of failing? And that's okay to be normalized at a big tech company. Would love to just know your thoughts on just the mistake process. How do you recover from that?
Well, I just wanted to say it's important to know that Google is still a company and it's not just all rose colored and there's people and you don't always get along. I've made my best friends at Google, but I've also like cried in a see-through office to my manager because of people at Google. So it's, there's still like dynamics that are happening in every workplace. So it's definitely something, I just wanted to temper all the hype. Obviously Google's a great place to work too. But I think failure or like, and on a every 6 months we get performance reviews and we have feedback from our manager. And I think just thinking of it as feedback and like growth opportunity. I think we're always eager to get promoted. We're always eager to do what's next. But I think it's important to remember that like, if you can't enjoy what you have right now, you cannot enjoy what you have in the future. So just like be present, learn from what you need, like from your current role, what you need to learn, be like, what can I get from this today? And the feedback that you get or the failures that you have, take them in stride and learn from them. And that's the way like you're going to grow because nobody grows without failures.
Yeah, and I just want to add on to that. I think if you do fail, it's important to own up to it. Don't try to cast blame on anyone else or don't try to sweep it under the rug. Just own up to it and be transparent. And that's part of how you learn.
Yeah, that's a great point. And then on the topic, just last question here, maybe Aisha Hassan, you can answer this because you've switched into 2 different roles. Did you feel a lot of pressure into the new role that you transitioned to from your prior experience? Did you feel like I have to, achieve a certain level of standard? I guess, how do you level set those expectations with yourself and set yourself up for success in the new role?
Yeah, so we have this term at Google called Noogler, and I think like everybody has maybe like I would say 6 months to a year kind of period depending on like what role you're in. So even when I joined this role, they kind of like still consider me to be a noogler because I don't know everything. I couldn't possibly know everything. And that's kind of like based off of your learning schedule and like when you're comfortable to kind of be like, I'm ready to take things on. I'm kind of like ready to lead. And I think that kind of changes depending on experience, like how experienced you are overall. So in terms of pressure, no, I think this team, and this is like a common theme across Google, this team was very welcoming. They were super excited to like have me on. Like I can ask any question, no question is a dumb question at all. If anything, they're like always asking me to ask questions. And even my manager, there's kind of like expectations for sure, but I kind of like let my manager know, hey, I'm not ready for this yet, and I don't know this, and I don't think that at all is a bad thing to admit. I think if anything, it kind of like level sets yourself for the future.
Yeah, that's really important that you mentioned that. It's great. So I know we're at 7:42 here. We're going to open it up to Q&A. I'm going to pass it over to Javeria on our team. I know we have quite a few questions in the chat, so everyone feel free, if you have any questions for our panelists on their specific experiences, feel to drop it in and we'll try to get it covered in the next 15 minutes.
Yeah, so y'all did talk about the interview process briefly, but with so many applicants, it can be tough to even get that first interview. So do you guys have any tips on how to stand out and get your foot in the door?
I think what Kareem mentioned earlier, having a referral can help a lot. And even if you don't know someone closely, just go through your LinkedIn and see if you know anyone who works there and try to connect with them. Also, put in a bunch of buzzwords in your resume that are relevant to your field.
Yeah, I definitely think referrals are important. I was referred by my best friend's brother-in-law, who I caught up at a wedding about Google. So definitely like any like tertiary contacts you have, tap into those. But also look at the job description and just use the exact same action words. Try to like cater your resume as much as you can to the same job if it is a good fit for you truly.
Okay, thank you. We have a question for Munib. So from your perspective, what would you say is the biggest challenge that Google faces today from a financial standpoint?
I would say from especially like a cloud perspective, I would say the biggest issue would be data sovereignty. It's just because every country wants to have their data stored in their country, just for whatever purposes. I would say that that's one of the biggest challenges for Google Cloud to kind of overcome. And then as Google Cloud is still relatively in its infancy, so if they're able to kind of take care of these issues on the front end, it'll be insurmountable for their growth.
Cool. And then for Bisma, what advice do you have for data science majors seeking a job in the data field? And what should they expect from the interview process?
Yeah, so the interview for data science is part behavioral and part technical. And they are going to usually do a case study as well. So you should know SQL pretty well. That's common across Google data stuff. And then for your case study practice, try to think beyond just surface level answers. They really will push you to dig deeper. Like they'll keep asking you what else. So come up with some creative solutions to problems as you practice. And that'll just help you get in the mindset for when they keep pushing you in the interview.
Cool, thank you for that answer. And for Kareem, what advice do you have for strategy consultants with little to no tech backgrounds trying to go for roles at Google?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I was a consultant doing M&A, but I was going for a strategy role, and I actually didn't have a ton of tech experience either. First thing I would recommend is just depending on where you are at in your career, say you're less than 5 to 7 years out of undergrad or an MBA. I think there's a little bit of leeway to say like, hey, I have the skill sets necessary for this job, even if I don't have the direct experience. So talking about things like your ability to influence stakeholders or give presentations to executives, and the type of work, and if you break it down past just the actual like job description, like what have you done that would be applicable, I think that's step one. And then the second step is also just think about how you can differentiate yourself from plenty of other consultants that are probably vying for the same role. And so for me, coming from M&A, like the spin that I sold the team on was like, hey, I have this experience end to end on a deal. I can do the strategy part, but I know in-house in this strategy in-house role, I'm gonna have to go land and execute this as well. And I have that experience. And so I would just think about kind of what unique perspective you have from your projects or from your background that you can bring to the table. Maybe it's your perspective as a minority. Maybe it's your educational background. Maybe it's something else that you've done, leadership, extracurricular. Just think about that.
Yeah, thanks for that great advice. Aisha, maybe you can answer this question. So for roles in growth areas like the cloud teams, would you say that there's a lot of experience required?
I think it depends on the role. I think if it's an entry level role, which mine was, there was like no expectation of knowing anything about cloud because I knew absolutely nothing. But I think if you were to enter from like maybe like 2-3 years out of college, there would be some form of expectation to like at least know how cloud works, at least know the competitors and stuff like that.
Okay, and then Aisha and sorry, you did talk about this briefly, but for Mahe and Aisha Hassan, we had a question about how you got started in product management and what are some things you did in college that might have helped you prepare for that role. Mahe, if you want to go first.
Yeah. So I will say to Aisha's point, a couple years out of college, there is an expectation that you can at least talk about the cloud and that you can place Google in the competitive landscape and understand at a high level those concepts. They're not super difficult to understand though, so that's certainly something that anyone could do. To the other part of your question, don't actually know if anything that I did in college connected very significantly to what I ended up doing at Google, which I think is kind of the norm. But you use some of those tangible skills that you pick up while you're in school, how to study, how to manage time, how to work with different types of people, and can parlay those into really any kind of role that you want to have in your career. It's just about taking the experience that you have in college or at an entry level position and aligning that with the role that you're applying for within the cloud space. But you definitely need to have some background or general information about what it is.
Okay, and then we had kind of a fun question. What is your favorite part of the Google office that you work in? Because obviously we've all heard like they have some really cool things in their office spaces. And also, how does Google maintain its culture now that we're all working remotely? Anyone who wants to take this question can jump in.
I think one of my favorite parts about the office culture is I get to bring my dog in, which is really, really nice. I think Google was one of the first larger companies that pioneered this idea of having pets in the office. And I get a little less work done, but I'm a lot happier doing it. So I really can't complain.
I would say my favorite part was the coffee, the unlimited coffee. Especially like the Austin office, we had this really cool, I don't know what you call it, like a rooftop coffee area. And the baristas were like awesome. So honestly, I'd spend like half my day up there avoiding work and just drinking coffee. I don't know if anybody else can relate to that, but that was an amazing perk.
Yeah, I recently started going back into the Austin office and it is as awesome as I remembered. Like the rooftop coffee situation is great. The food is amazing. The perks are definitely it's a big selling point about Google.
We should have a battle of the offices. Which one do you guys think is the best? Is it Austin? Is it the Bay? something else?
New York by far.
It's New York.
Plus
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, you go on the terrace and you get to see like all the buildings and skyscrapers, and it's a sight to see.
Well, that sounds unanimous to me.
So this is a really interesting question. Anyone who wants to take this, what is something that would make you leave Google? I know it's kind of a tough one. Oh, thank you.
I think, I've heard from people that sometimes there's so much positivity around at Google that you feel like there's not enough criticism for you to grow in a way. So I've heard people leaving their jobs for that sense.
That's interesting. Does anyone else have an answer?
I'd say if there was like a reason I felt like I wasn't growing anymore, I wasn't learning anything new, something new, that would cause me to leave. Yeah.
Okay. And I think we can do one more question. So, again, for anyone that wants to take this, is there anything about working for Google that surprised you when you first started?
I was really surprised by the reimbursement options they have for continuing your education, and not just like going back to college, but taking random classes, like if you want to take a cooking class or something like that. Also, you can get, if you want to buy some books related to your field or business, you can get those reimbursed. So they have a lot of cool options for that.
Okay, yeah, it's 7:55, so I think that's all the questions that we have time for. Thank you to all the speakers. I'll pass it back to Sarah for closing remarks.
Yeah, thanks to Javeria and to all the amazing speakers and everyone in the audience for those wonderful questions. You guys came up with questions that I didn't even think of. Like, those are some interesting things. And also to our amazing speakers, you guys, Aisha, I was just thinking about YouTube. Like, imagine telling a kid like, hey, you know that thing you watch on your iPad all day? I work for YouTube. It's pretty exciting. And the rest of you guys too, like, I don't know where we all would be today if we didn't have Google. So I think we can all relate to that. And most importantly, seeing people who are a little bit melanated, seeing women, seeing Muslim men, Muslim women in these roles is extremely empowering. And to you guys, you might be like, oh, I'm just another one of them. But to us and to so many people aspiring to be in tech, aspiring to be at these big tech companies, or just other marginalized folk or minorities in this space, I think it's very empowering to see you guys in these roles and to see you succeed. So thank you for sharing your wisdom and for being mentors to our community. I'm going to pass it back over to Safa now.
Yeah, Sarah hit the nail on the head. Seriously, you guys are all rock stars in your own discipline. Super happy we could host you all and just shed light that Google is a really diverse company, and kind of what Aisha and Sari mentioned earlier, that yeah, it's not always rosy where you work, but there are people, incredible people at these companies, incredible Muslims at these companies who are trailblazing in their fields, doing a lot of cool and interesting things, and we're happy and honored you could be part of our panel. So with that, I'd like to close it off, and I know we have a few minutes left here. So for the audience members, if you want to drop your LinkedIn, connect with other folks, feel free to do that. Stay connected with Muslim Women Technology. We're going to have awesome programming in the new year. Our chapters are expanding, new initiatives coming up, a lot of great stuff. So stay connected with us, and any way we can help support your career development in the tech space, let us know. We're happy to be there for you all in the process. And yeah, anything else our speakers would like to say before we wrap it up?
Thank you for organizing this. It's a great resource, and I wish I had something like this when I was, growing up and stuff. But I'm glad that you guys are taking the initiative and doing this. So feel free to reach out whenever if you guys have any questions and stuff. I'll be able to help you out.
Yeah, I want to echo that sentiment. Thank you, Safa and Sarah, for kicking this off. Such an amazing initiative. And if anybody wants to reach out to me, I'm happy to chat about different roles at Google.
Great. Awesome. Thank you all so much. I'm going to close out the chat in a few minutes, but thanks everyone for joining. Hope everyone has a great holiday weekend if we don't talk to everyone. But yeah, take care, stay in touch, and feel free to stay connected with Muslim Women Technology. All right, take care, everyone.